People are social animals. In general, we like to meet people. We have different kinds of experiences of meeting people. However, the mainstream TV shows try to paint the picture of meeting people or friends in a perfect way. Going to get yourself ready to meet your best friends for breakfast before working, dressing up for clubs and bars with the best friends with good times, a nice and good-looking single guy, working as investment banks hit up in the public, etc. I'm not saying that these things will not be possible. I'm saying that we get brainwashed by the perfect culture, yet ignore the counterculture of human interaction. Recently, I've started my YouTube channel, and I like to explore more counterculture. Reddit Let's Not Meet is one of the places where people would like to share their horrible experiences. Back in about 2000 or 2001, I was driving by myself from visiting my mom in Colorado back to Arizona. I was in a station wagon and had a desk my mom had given me that was my grandfather's. I've been scared, driving at night, that there is someone in my backseat that is going to get me. This might be because of too many scary movies or because my mom's paranoia rubbed off on me. I was in the army and drove back and forth a lot to visit her. She would get mad at me for sleeping at rest stops or gas stations and tell me someone was going to kidnap me and kill me. But I just didn't want to be bothered with the hassle and expense of a motel most of the time. I digress. So I'm driving an empty stretch of highway late at night with no other cars around. This red truck comes up behind me, flashing his lights and honking his horn at me. I was thinking to myself that there was something wrong with my car, or maybe there was something wrong with the desk in the hatchback, because why else would be so insistent on me pulling over? So I pull over, I was in my mid-20s and still a bit naive, and get out of my car. As I'm getting out of my car, he's directly behind me, and still flashing his lights and honking his horn. I'm about to get to the middle of the car. I plan on going to the back to see what could be wrong with my car when it hit me. Why is he still honking at me when I'm out of my car? That's odd. Then he gets out of his truck. That's when I knew something just wasn't right. I jumped back in my car and sped off. The next exit was 45 miles or so away. He followed me the entire time. I take the first exit and go to a crowded grocery store with a laundromat next to it. There was an ambulance parked at the laundromat with its lights flashing, and I was next to it. I figured if there was an ambulance, then eventually a police officer should be able to come. The man stayed in his truck in the grocery store parking lot watching me the entire time. I was terrified. I did not want to get out of my car and felt like an idiot. If I wouldn't have had to tell someone what happened. I waited about an hour and he finally left. After he left, I waited a little longer before continuing my drive back to Arizona. I was paranoid and watchful for any red trucks the whole entire time. Fast forward about 5 or 6 years, I'm watching Unsolved Mysteries or some similar type crime show with my hubby at the time. He knew exactly what happened as we were dating when it happened. And what story pops up about a man on that exact stretch of highway with a red truck and used those exact tactics to get a few women to pull over and murdered them. I'm really glad my gut told me something was wrong, and to get back in my car and drive. Hotel stalker. I worked as a flight attendant for a few years. When I decided to take an extended sabbatical from the college, there were a handful of let's not meet situations in which I encountered, but one in particular still makes my skin crawl more than any other. I was born and raised in Texas, but I've moved to New York when I was 21, so when I found out at the beginning of a week-long trip that I'd have a couple of overnights in Austin, I was super excited to go to my home state for a few days. My brother lived just north of the city, and we planned to hang out and go to dinner the night I arrived when he got off work. And the following day, we were going to meet up with our dad, who lived about an hour away. So, I get to the hotel downtown, the crew and I check in, and then we head off to our rooms. Short elevator ride, and I get to mine. Where not even 5 minutes later, there's a loud, hard knock on the door. It was only around 1 or 2 p.m., and I hadn't called either my dad or brother to let them know I was in town yet, so they wouldn't know what room. I assumed it was maybe one of my crewmates, so I headed to the door. Before even making it to the door, however, a loud, male voice on the other side boomed, The front desk sent me about the bathroom problem you called in before trying to open the door. Unlock the door and open up, miss. I need in, now. I froze in my tracks. I hadn't even been in the bathroom yet, let alone called anything to the front desk. I'm a petite chick, and while I take no shit from anyone despite my size, I still err on the side of caution, slowly inching towards the door to look out the peephole. All I could tell was that the man on the other side was at least 6 feet tall and easily over double my weight. No way in hell was I going to unlock the door. I responded to the guy, telling him he must have had the wrong room. He continued pounding on the door while constantly turning the handle, telling me no, he needed in, and he was getting in the room one way or another. I panicked, but thankfully had the senses to grab the phone and call the front desk. The concierge confirmed that they had neither sent anyone up to my room, nor had they received a call about the bathroom. The entire time, this fucking guy was still determined to get into my room, pounding and yelling. Luckily for me, the front desk had dispatched security to my floor. When the security officer stepped off the elevator a few seconds later, I can hear them in the hall approach and ask the guy who he was, what he was doing, and tell him he needed to leave the hotel. He immediately gets hostile and aggressive towards them, and the front desk clerk I'm still on the phone with tells me police have been called and are on their way. In the meantime, I'm trapped in my room, scared shitless, to be honest. Long story short, the cops showed up pretty quickly and managed to arrest the guy for trespassing and criminal menacing or some shit like that. I later found out that the guy was also wanted in connections to a string of break-ins and violent sexual assaults in Austin. He had seen and stalked me from the minute I entered the hotel lobby. Apparently, I was exactly his type of victim. Nothing else happened after all that, but it still riled the fuck out of me for the rest of my stay in that hotel. Boyfriend turned stalker. So this happened a couple years ago when I was a sophomore in high school. I had this boyfriend named Fisher. He wasn't the most attractive, but he was nice, so we started talking and eventually decided to become a couple. Things started off normally as they usually do, but soon I started to become overwhelmed by his attention. He never wanted me to see my best friend or do anything that did not involve him. Eventually, he would want to talk on the phone as soon as we parted for the night and wouldn't let me go to bed. One night I couldn't take it and I told him I was going to bed, then I hung up. About a half hour later, I hear a knock on my basement door. I moved the curtains a little and he's standing out there. He refused to leave until I let him in. This went on for months and months. He would stalk me at work and home. If I didn't answer, he would call my parents and ask where I was and what I was doing. At one point I tried to break up with him and he started freaking out and saying he was going to kill himself and it would be my fault. I was afraid to leave him and afraid to go anywhere, thinking he would follow me. One of the times he showed up in the middle of the night, I let him in, hoping I could convince him to leave. Wrong move. He went into my brother's room, picked up his butterfly knife and began playing with it. I was getting a little freaked out by then, so I asked him to leave. As I went to walk away, he grabbed my arm really tight and wrenched me back towards him while still holding the knife. I hit him in the face and started screaming at him to get out of my house. The next day he went on like nothing had happened. I broke up with him over the phone that day. That wasn't the end though. A couple of days later, I was hanging out with a guy friend and my ex showed up and tried to talk to me. My guy friend knew everything that had happened, so he offered his house a place to avoid my ex. We quickly left and walked there, only to realize that my ex had followed us. We went inside and looked out the window to see my ex sitting on his front steps. I then got a call from my mom saying my ex had told her I was in danger and I was going into a strange man's house. When I told her the truth, she called him back and flipped out on him. He still wouldn't leave. He started yelling at us through the window that he wouldn't leave unless I came out and hugged him. He kept saying, "It's one little hug, and you owe me this." We finally got him to leave by threat of calling the police. Still not the end. The last main event with him was finding out he had been stealing my dirty socks and keeping them for his fetish. He offered them and my hoodie I left at his place back. He said I could only get them if I came alone. I told him no way that was happening, and that I was done with him for good. We still went to the same high school, so I saw him for years, but we didn't have any interactions after that. So, Creepy fetish XBF. Let's not meet again.